The Rest Stop Stalker. After a grueling 12-hour shift on the road, I finally spotted a rest stop looming in the distance. It was late, and the sky was a thick, inky black, punctuated only by the faint glow of the rest stop's flickering lights. I pulled in, exhaustion weighing heavily on me. The last few hours of driving had left me feeling frazzled, and all I wanted was to stretch my legs and grab a cup of coffee. As I stepped out of my truck, a chill ran down my spine. The night air was unusually cold for this time of year, and the silence enveloped me like a shroud. I rubbed my arms and trudged toward the restroom. That's when I noticed it, a figure lurking in the shadows just beyond the reach of the light. My stomach knotted as I squinted, trying to make out any details. It looked like a man, but his features were obscured by the darkness. Just my imagination, I muttered to myself, dismissing the unsettling feeling. I headed inside, splashed cold water on my face, and poured myself a steaming cup of coffee. As I took a sip, I glanced out the window. The figure was gone. Relieved, I stepped back outside, the warmth of the coffee fading quickly in the chill of the night. I climbed back into my truck and started the engine, ready to hit the road again. But as I glanced around, a wave of unease washed over me. Other trucks surrounded me, more than I had noticed before. Each one parked silently, their engines off. There were no drivers in sight, and I began to feel a gnawing sense of dread. I put my foot on the gas, but before I could move, headlights flickered on, illuminating the rest stop like floodlights. My heart raced as I saw shadowy figures stepping out from behind the trucks. They wore dark clothing, and their faces were obscured by hoods. Panic surged within me, and I realized I was trapped. My mind raced. I quickly locked my doors and glanced around for an escape route, but the figures were closing in, forming a circle around my truck. Their murmurs echoed in the night, a chilling chant that sent shivers down my spine. "Join us! Join us!" I grabbed my phone to call for help, but I had no signal. I cursed under my breath and looked up just in time to see one of the figures, a tall man with a scarred face, approach my window. "You've arrived just in time," he said, his voice smooth yet dripping with malice. "We're about to begin." "Begin what?" I stammered, panic tightening my throat. "Your initiation," he replied, grinning widely. "You'll make a perfect addition to our family." Desperate, I slammed the truck into reverse, the tires screeching against the pavement. The figure lunged at the door, but I hit the gas, tearing backward. I didn't care about anything except escaping. I swerved around the other trucks, narrowly avoiding the figures as they scrambled to get out of my way. I shot down the dark highway, my heart racing, barely able to breathe as the rest stop disappeared behind me. My mind replayed the encounter, the faces of those cultists etched into my memory. They wanted me to join them, to become part of something sinister, and I had narrowly escaped. The further I drove, the more I felt the weight lift, but I knew I'd never stop at a rest stop again, at least not without checking the surroundings first. As dawn broke, casting a warm glow over the landscape, I couldn't shake the feeling that something still lingered in the shadows, watching me from a distance, waiting for the moment I might let my guard down. In that moment, I made a vow. I would always be vigilant, for I had glimpsed the darkness that hid behind the facade of everyday life. And in that stillness, I knew I was never truly alone on the road. Now this story. The Phantom Hitchhiker. The night was pitch black as I cruised down a long stretch of desolate highway. The headlights of my rig cut through the darkness, illuminating the road ahead like a beacon. I had been on the road for hours, the hum of the tires and the steady rhythm of the engine lulling me into a trance. I was nearing the halfway point of my long haul when I spotted a figure by the roadside, waving frantically. I slowed down, rolling the window down slightly as I approached. The hitchhiker was a young man, probably in his early 20s, with a worn-out backpack slung over one shoulder and a nervous look in his eyes. "Need a lift?" I asked, and he nodded eagerly, climbing into the passenger seat. As we pulled back onto the highway, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about him. "Thanks for stopping," he said, his voice shaky. "This stretch can be pretty lonely." I glanced at him, taking in his disheveled appearance. "You got that right. It's dead out here. What brings you this way?" He shrugged, staring out at the passing trees. "Just trying to get to the next town. Heard some stories about this highway, though. Pretty creepy stuff." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Like what?" He leaned in closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "They say this road is haunted. People have disappeared along here, gone without a trace. Some say you can still hear their voices at night." A chill ran down my spine. "You serious?" I chuckled nervously, trying to brush it off. "I've been driving this route for years and I've never seen anything strange." "Maybe you're just lucky," he replied, a hint of a smile on his lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. "But if you listen closely, you might hear them wailing for help." I glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows, but there was nothing, just the dark expanse behind us. Still, an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach, and the truck began to feel a little too cramped. As we drove on, I started to notice strange occurrences. A faint whisper seemed to drift through the air, almost imperceptible. I shook my head, attributing it to fatigue. But then I saw a shadow darting in and out of the corner of my eye, something moving in the darkness behind us. "Did you see that?" I asked, my heart racing. The hitchhiker nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the rearview mirror. "They're always there," he murmured, "waiting for someone to take their place." The shadows continued to dance in the darkness, and the whispers grew louder, overlapping with each other like a chorus of lost souls. "Turn back," they seemed to cry. "Get out while you can." I felt a bead of sweat trickle down my back. "Okay, this is getting weird," I said, trying to sound lighthearted. But the dread clawed at me, tightening its grip with every passing mile. When we reached a fork in the road, I finally decided to stop for a moment. I pulled off to the side, turning to the hitchhiker. "You can get out here," I said, forcing a smile. "This is as far as I go." He just stared at me, a knowing look in his eyes. "You really shouldn't stop here. It's not safe." "I'm not taking any chances," I replied, feeling a mix of fear and annoyance. I could see the town's lights in the distance and just wanted to get there, away from this eerie conversation. I took a deep breath and opened the door. When I turned to say goodbye, the hitchhiker was gone, just like that. One moment he was there, and the next, he had vanished without a trace. I blinked in disbelief, scanning the empty passenger seat and the shadows outside the truck. Had I imagined him? I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Panic surged through me as I reached for my phone, but the call I tried to make failed, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I drove away from that desolate spot, adrenaline coursing through my veins. As I approached the town, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The hitchhiker's stories echoed in my mind. Had I really picked up a phantom? Or was he simply a figment of my overworked imagination? Even now, I wonder if he ever existed at all, or if he was just a warning of what could happen to someone driving too far into the night. To this day, I avoid that highway, knowing that some roads are best left untraveled, and some hitchhikers are better left alone. The Midnight Delivery. The night was quiet, too quiet, as I made my way down the winding roads toward the outskirts of town. I had just finished a long shift, eager to get home and unwind, when my phone buzzed with a last-minute delivery request. The location was an abandoned warehouse, notorious among truckers for its eerie reputation, but the pay was too good to pass up. I cursed under my breath, knowing I should probably refuse, but the thought of extra cash pulled me in. The warehouse loomed in the distance, shrouded in darkness and partially hidden by overgrown weeds. As I pulled up, the dim light from the flickering street lamp cast strange shadows that danced around the cracked concrete. I parked and stepped out, the cool night air sending an unexpected shiver down my spine. Approaching the entrance, I noticed strange symbols carved into the doorframe, jagged and twisted, like something out of a horror movie. Just a bunch of kids messing around, I muttered to myself, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling. I had deliveries to make, and I needed to get on with it. Inside, the warehouse was even more unnerving. The faint sound of dripping water echoed in the vast emptiness, mixing with the heavy silence. As I unloaded my cargo, boxes filled with various supplies, I noticed more symbols scrawled across the walls, glowing faintly in the dim light. I felt a chill creep over me, and a sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut behind me. Great, I thought, trying to laugh off my anxiety as I grabbed the last box. But as I moved further inside, I began to hear it, the faintest whispers, like a chorus of voices weaving through the air. They seemed to call my name, pulling at the edges of my mind. I froze, heart racing, scanning the shadows around me for any sign of movement. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. No answer came, just the persistent whispers, growing louder and more frantic. Panic surged within me. I hurried to finish unloading, the oppressive atmosphere weighing heavily on my chest. As I reached for the last box, I felt an inexplicable chill wash over me, causing me to shudder. The whispers intensified, echoing off the walls. "Leave. Now," they urged, the voices laced with urgency and dread. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging me into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, the glow illuminating my immediate surroundings. The shadows seemed to writhe, and I could feel something watching me from the corners of the warehouse. "Get out!" the whispers shouted, rising to a deafening crescendo. My instincts kicked in, and I bolted for the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic gripped me as I yanked on the handle, feeling it resist as if something was holding it shut from the other side. "Please!" I shouted, slamming my shoulder against the door. The whispers transformed into laughter, cold and mocking. I could hear something moving behind me, a rustling in the darkness, and I turned just in time to catch a glimpse of a shadow darting across the room. With adrenaline fueling my desperation, I shoved the last box aside and lunged for a nearby window, only to find it sealed tight. My breaths came in quick gasps, heart pounding as I scrambled to find another way out. The whispers had turned into a chant, echoing my name with sinister glee. "Your delivery has arrived," the voices taunted. I turned back to see the symbols glowing brighter, the air thickening with a palpable energy. It felt as if the very walls were closing in around me, suffocating me with their presence. Then, in the midst of the chaos, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall silhouette dressed in tattered robes, its face obscured by a hood. "You shouldn't have come here," it hissed, its voice a low growl. "This is not for you." I turned to run, but the warehouse was shifting, twisting in on itself as if the very ground beneath me was alive. Desperate to escape, I made one last frantic attempt at the door, slamming into it with all my weight. It finally gave way, and I stumbled out into the cool night air, gasping for breath. I didn't look back as I raced to my truck, the whispers fading behind me, replaced by the sounds of my own frantic heartbeat. I sped away, leaving the haunted warehouse and its dark forces behind. But even now, as I drive through the night, I can't shake the feeling that I never truly escaped. The memories of that night haunt me, reminding me that some deliveries are never just about the cargo. The Highway Haunt. It was just another night on the road, the kind that felt endless, with only the hum of my truck and the occasional flicker of headlights to keep me company. I was driving along a notoriously haunted stretch of highway known for its eerie stories. Ghost sightings, strange accidents, and drivers who swore they heard voices whispering in the dark. I'd heard all the tales, but like any seasoned trucker, I brushed them off as folklore, meant to scare the inexperienced. The moon hung high in the sky, illuminating the winding road ahead. My eyes were heavy, fatigue setting in, when I spotted a flickering light in the distance. It danced like a flame, drawing me closer. Curiosity piqued, I pulled over to investigate, thinking it might be a stranded motorist in need of help. As I approached the light, it grew brighter, revealing a figure standing just off the shoulder of the road. A woman in white, her long dress flowing like mist around her ankles. She seemed ethereal, almost as if she were made of the very light that illuminated her, but her eyes, wide with desperation, drew me in. "Please help me," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper carried by the wind. "What's wrong?" I asked, my heart pounding. The chill in the air intensified, a shiver racing down my spine. "I need to get to my home," she said, pointing down the road. "Please, you must take me." Something about her plea felt wrong, but I couldn't shake the urgency in her voice. I gestured toward my truck. "Get in. I'll give you a ride." As she climbed into the passenger seat, I noticed a flicker of sadness in her eyes. The moment she closed the door, a wave of unease washed over me. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye as I started the engine. "Where do you live?" She pointed ahead, directing me further down the highway. "Just a little further," she insisted. But as I drove, the landscape began to shift. Trees grew denser, shadows lengthened, and the air grew heavier. Suddenly, I heard the unmistakable sound of tires screeching, and my vision blurred. I was pulled back in time, reliving a moment I had hoped to forget, my own horrific accident from years ago on this very highway. I felt the panic rise within me as the memories flooded back, a jarring mix of fear and guilt. "Stay calm!" I shouted at myself, trying to fight against the wave of nostalgia. But it was no use. The details rushed in, the bright lights, the impact, the feeling of being tossed around like a rag doll in my cab. My heart raced as I clutched the steering wheel, feeling the grip of fate tighten around me. The ghostly woman turned to me, her expression morphing into one of pity. "You must break the cycle," she whispered, her voice echoing through the memories. "You're stuck in a loop, and you can't save me until you save yourself." "What do you mean?" I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice as I fought against the unfolding nightmare. "How do I escape?" Suddenly the road ahead darkened, and I felt the weight of unseen forces pressing down on me. I had to act fast. "Focus!" I yelled, willing myself to remember the lessons I'd learned from that accident. I took a deep breath, steering away from the phantom of the past, from the horrific collision that had haunted my dreams. The truck jolted as I veered off the highway and onto a gravel path, the scenery shifting around us. The woman's eyes widened in surprise as I sped away from the darkness that threatened to engulf us. "Keep going," she urged, her voice gaining strength. "You're doing it! You have to break free!" With every ounce of determination, I pushed the gas pedal to the floor, driving through the twisting path as the weight of the highway began to lift. The road blurred around me, and I could feel the specters of the past receding into the night. Finally, the landscape opened up, and I burst out of the shadows into the moonlit clearing. I glanced at the woman beside me, and a sense of relief washed over me as I realized I was free. The weight of the cycle had broken, and she smiled softly, the sadness in her eyes replaced with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her form beginning to dissolve into the night. "You've set me free." With that, she vanished, leaving behind only a gentle breeze that rustled the leaves along the road. I blinked in disbelief, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. As I continued my drive, the haunting stretch of highway faded in my rearview mirror, and I felt lighter, unburdened. Though the memories of that accident would always linger, I now carried the knowledge that sometimes the ghosts of our past only need a chance to be set free. The roadside inn. After hours of driving through a desolate stretch of highway, fatigue crept in. The glow of neon lights flickered in the distance, guiding me to a roadside inn that appeared to be just what I needed, a place to rest before hitting the road again. As I pulled into the parking lot, the inn looked quaint, with an old-world charm that was surprisingly inviting. Little did I know, it was anything but ordinary. The moment I stepped inside, I was greeted by the warm glow of a fireplace and the scent of freshly baked bread. The staff, a peculiar mix of friendly faces, welcomed me with wide smiles that felt almost too eager. "Welcome. We're so glad to have you," one of the women said, her voice soothing but with an edge of excitement that sent a shiver down my spine. After checking in, I made my way to my room, but noticed a peculiar sign hanging by the entrance. "Every story has a place here." I shrugged it off as an odd decoration and settled in, eager for a good night's sleep. As night fell, I decided to head down to the inn's cozy lounge for a snack. The atmosphere was relaxed, but there was an underlying tension I couldn't quite place. The staff buzzed around, whispering to each other, their eyes darting to the few other guests scattered in the room. Curiosity got the better of me, and I approached the front desk. "Can I get a drink?" I asked, trying to shake off the unsettling vibe. "Of course," the woman behind the desk replied enthusiastically. "But we also love to hear stories from our guests. Have any to share?" I hesitated, but eventually recounted a few of my more interesting experiences on the road. They listened intently, leaning in as if I were sharing a secret. As I spoke, I noticed their expressions shift, anticipation mixed with an unsettling glee. I dismissed it as my imagination running wild and continued. But the more I shared, the more bizarre the staff became. They interrupted with odd questions, probing deeper into my tales. The atmosphere grew heavy, thick with strange energy. I glanced at the walls and noticed something peculiar. The wallpaper appeared to ripple, as if alive, whispering secrets beyond my comprehension. I quickly wrapped up my story, hoping to shift the topic, but they only seemed more excited. "Oh, what a wonderful story!" one of the staff exclaimed. "We simply must hear more." Feeling trapped, I tried to excuse myself. "I think I need to get some rest. It's been a long drive." But they wouldn't let me leave so easily. As I stood up, I felt a chill sweep through the room, and the staff's demeanor changed. The smiles faded, replaced with unsettling expressions that hinted at something darker. They closed in on me, their voices now hushed, as if sharing a secret among themselves. "You have so many stories left to tell," one murmured, their eyes glinting with a predatory hunger. "Stories that will live on within these walls," another chimed in, grinning wide and eerie. It dawned on me that the inn wasn't just a resting place, it was a trap. The walls, which seemed to breathe with life, were hungry for tales, and I had unknowingly fed them with my words. Panic surged through me as I realized what they intended. "Let me out!" I shouted, pushing past the staff, but they closed ranks, their laughter ringing in my ears. I bolted for the exit, heart pounding, only to find the door locked tight. Desperation clawed at my throat as I pounded on the wood, pleading for release. "You must finish your story," a voice called from behind me, chilling me to the bone. "Or become part of ours." The walls began to whisper louder, drowning out my thoughts. Shadows danced at the corners of my vision, twisting into grotesque shapes that beckoned me closer. I felt the weight of countless souls trapped within, each echoing their stories of despair, Fighting against the dread settling in my stomach, I recalled the tales I'd shared, the fears, the close calls, the regrets. I focused on the last story I had told, the one about the open road, and poured every ounce of my spirit into it. The room vibrated with energy as I wove my words, hoping it would be enough to break free. Just as I reached the climax of my story, I felt a sharp pull, as if the inn itself was trying to claim me. "No! I won't be a part of this!" I screamed, shoving my hands against the walls to ground myself in reality. Suddenly, the door burst open, and I stumbled into the night air, gasping for breath. Behind me, the staff stood frozen, their expressions twisted in fury. "You can't escape your stories!" they screamed, their voices merging with the whispers of the walls. I ran to my truck, heart racing, and slammed the door shut. As I sped away, the glow of the inn faded into the distance. I could still hear the faint echoes of the staff's laughter mingling with the wind, a haunting reminder of the trap I had narrowly escaped. From that day on, I never shared my stories lightly.